In this video, I am going to attempt to demonstrate that the Enuma Elish is built on a template that is based on the human life cycle, that it is how we came about, and it is how we heal, to go on a healing path. Now, it sounds fantastical. I understand what it sounds like, but I recognize it from antiquity as an incredibly early form of a creation, and then what would be called later a monomyth that Joseph Campbell identified that he didn't have very complete. There's something more to it than what he said. Now, as far as the material itself and understanding what I'm talking about, you have to see this for yourself. I'm not teaching this from a point of academia. I'm teaching this from the standpoint of somebody who can find the material. Academics don't know this, okay? But I've treated it like I'm a smart kid from 5,000 years ago, and I wanted to understand it, knowing that colleges were not really available, books were not available, and you approach it in a different way. And with that mindset, it helps you get out of the modern biases and begin to see something different that's in here. It is not an academic approach. It's really a pathway to inner healing. Who knows that? I had opportunity to take the path, so I found it experientially. And that's what this video is going to be about. So it's very complicated and it's very old. I've got a couple of videos that I did as far as conceptual reading that I'll post links below to those. This is an important part of what we're doing. Before we get into it though, what I realize is that there's this mental structure that has to be in place. We have to understand what we're doing as we're reading this story before we just jump right into the story. So to that end, I'm going to go build a mental concept using something simple, and then we'll be able to apply that to the Enuma Elish. My name is Dan Paulson, everyone. Welcome to the video. Now, what I'm going to suggest is that if we built a mental construct, an idea of what they're doing in our minds in a simpler manner first, then when we go through the Enuma Elish, which is 5,000, 6,000 years old or something, 7,000 perhaps, really old material. They're using language back then, analogous terms that we have to try to figure out what they're talking about. They're not real things. They're not true. They're giving life to something in a story. However, they're doing it in a very thick way. Now, what I want to do is, right off the bat, I'm going to start in someplace simple. What we're going to do is just page 1 of the Tao Te Ching. What we're going to do is look at these verses, interpret them, and we're going to understand what they're doing. So as soon as we get to the Enuma Elish and this weird stuff is going all over the place, we know that weird stuff goes on this simpler mental construct that we're about to develop right here. Okay, so I give you verse 1. This is the Stephen Mitchell translation. And I really like the Tao Te Ching. It has some wonderful ways of teaching in here. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The unnameable is the eternally real. Naming is the origin of all particular things. Free from desire, you realize the mystery. Caught in desire, you see only the manifestations. Yet, mystery and manifestations come from this same source. This source is called darkness. Darkness within darkness, the gateway to all understanding. Okay, here's how we have to manage this. This is the guru, Lao Tzu. This is his teaching in the order that you would get it. If you need to understand what life is about, and you go say, Master, help me. He starts off, that's the very first verse. Now, this one is not old like Babylonian. This is about, 500 years older than Jesus material. 2,500 to, something like that years old. About the same time as Buddha. Okay, so what we have here, though, is verses that are very weird, and they're not meant to be plain language. There's they don't have schools back then, books, things like that. These are memorized. There's something you have to work out in your mind. It's a mental puzzle that if you work it out, what you're doing is literally wiring your brain. By the time you get done figuring out what that means, you don't just know it academically. It's a part of who you are, so it'll be a part of your a part of your life experientially. So it's incredibly important for people to figure these out on their own. You could sit there and listen to interpretations, and I have, and I don't know anybody who interprets like I do. I think that there's a way when you crack the code that everything opens up no matter what you read, and this is no exception. This isn't the one true thing over all everything else in the world. This is one vehicle carrying something at a deeper level. That deeper layer is what we're looking for. Now, and when we're interpreting like this, we have to play around with the verse. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The Tao is this way, this teaching. We're trying to teach this pathway. And what they're saying is that the pathway that can be told is not the eternal pathway. The manner that you need to, it's not eternal. So you would look at that and, various interpretations I've heard people stop there and go, oh, well, by golly, that means it's too nebulous. You can never understand it. There's something a little too deep. It's always mysterious. You're going to be constantly searching for this. Because it's not real. It's just something you find out in your own mind. And I don't believe that is accurate at all. In compliance with many other sources of material, one of the first things they let you know is that it is a mental path. Buddha in the Dhammapada starts right off in the very first verse. All that we are is the result of what we have thought. If you look at this right here and say the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao, think through that. What do we want? We want the eternal Tao, so obviously we can't tell it. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. So what is the eternal Tao then? If telling the Tao isn't eternal, what makes it eternal? And what makes it eternal is that you take the path. We can talk about what to do all day long. It doesn't matter. We can talk about the process, the procedure, how we came about, how we must go back and address our memories, that we've got something that happened, we're holding a perception, that perception needs to be manipulated. We could do all that stuff right there. That is exactly what needs to happen. That is really true. But the reason it's not eternal is because it's not something you have experientially in your life, in your experience, in your mind. Not until we go through these. What this is letting us know is that it's a personal mental process right there. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao, but the Tao that is taken, the pathway that is taken for inner healing is, and what does that happen? How do you do that? You go to your memories. Do we know that? Let's move on. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. I'm going to skip that one and come back to it in a second, because there's something that if we link into something down here below, it'll help us understand where we are in life. This is about us coming about in life and telling us what we need to do to heal. We get down to this verse here where it says, naming is the origin of all particular things. What we know right there specifically, if this is a verse about me and it's mental, then what this is telling me is that every time I name something, every time I had an experience and that I remember it with memory and emotion, that is the origin of that. All particular things. Naming is the origin of all particular things. They're the things in my life, the things that I've experienced. That's what I have created through my naming of that. If you and you're going to do that, that's what's going to happen. If you get hurt, if you get raped or molested or something, somehow, maybe you are the perpetrator. Somehow we've got something that is an experience that we have that we continue to live through later. That is, the naming of that is at the time we have that experience and we classify it in some manner with emotion. And when I say live through it later, it doesn't always mean that it physically manifests. It might be something that we're living through that only makes it to our mind, but it creates turmoil it creates turmoil in life. It doesn't leave us in peace. It's really super easy to get off course when we're trying to make these interpretations. Always remember this as you're interpreting the verse and you're trying to figure it out. Pretend that this is information coming to you from the wise man on the mountain. You went to him and said, my life sucks. What happened? What do I do? Interpret the verses with that in mind. Okay, now we back up from there and say the unnameable is the eternally real. So you're like, okay, I want to live life without naming things. And then back up one more. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. Okay, now I'm seeing what's going on. I'm emerging from a big, vast something up here. I'm going to start having life experiences. And the best way to have them is to not name them, not to classify, not to connect with them in emotional ways and become parts of them, but we're going to. And as we're naming things, this is just a normal part of life. It's not just those experiences, it's just life. We're living unaware of the fact that that's what's happening, that we are becoming products of our experiences. Later, we get to a point where we go, I don't like my life. Well, you're a product of your experiences and the way we're judging them. This is how we rejudge those things so that the life experience changes. So this naming and all of that right there, that's exactly what this is. This is just us becoming who we are. That's what this is teaching us. Naming is the origin of all particular things. We are now hooked into this right here, knowing that exactly what is going on. It's a mental process, and what we are naming is what we're going to live through. Then it moves on. Free from desire, you realize the mystery. So that's what they're looking for here, the mystery. If you want to live in the Tao, if you know what they're looking for, you're always in the Tao. The Tao is you got nirvana, kingdom of heaven within, mystery. You realize the mystery. Free from desire. Desire is something that you have named. It's not real physical desire. Remember, it's a mental process. Always go back to that. It is not what I desire in the physical world. It's what I'm hanging on to at a deeper level. That term desire no longer means desire. It's an analogous term which means, and I have to read it conceptually, it means I'm hanging on to something. If I'm free from hanging on to anything, I realize the mystery of life. Caught, however, in desire, hanging on to things, you see only the manifestations. So now it's telling me that whatever I came from, I named things, and because of those, if I'm free from them, life is okay, but if I'm caught up in them, I'm going to see the return of them. I'm going to see the repeat of them. This is how I come about. Yet mystery and manifestations arise from the same source. This source is called darkness. Darkness within darkness. The gateway to all understanding. The gateway to all understanding, you're going to be turning inward. It's a mental process. Where's the gateway? Where's Rumi's door? Where's Jesus' narrow gate? All of them are going to tell us to turn inward at some point. There's a portal we go through. We turn inward. We cross a threshold. This one is not going to have a threshold crossing. It's not a story like that, but that's what this is doing right here. The gateway to all understanding. Yep, that's turning within darkness within darkness. That is the part of our mind that hides within the part of our mind. And yet mystery and manifestations arise from the same source. So right here, what we're seeing is that everything good and everything bad that happens to us, we're getting power from this source. As we make a decision about what it is, we've now given it good or bad power. We're going to see that in Abrahamic material in the beginning, right off the bat. There's this, where it shows up, where that one shows up? Yet mystery and manifestations arise from the same source. Mystery and manifestations arise from the same source. I won't say it all. Think about it. I will, who, you, and I will, those who, you. Fill in the words right there. Yeah. So it's being taught that from this realm, both good and bad happens. So we're going to find that in the material. So let me rephrase these now. I'm going to put them in plain language and read them again and see what they sound like. And I can't emphasize enough that even if you watch me do this and go, oh, that makes sense, you have to be able to sit and do this on your own. That very first one, the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao, comes into play. All right, the Tao that is experienced is the eternal Tao. The next one, leaving experiences unjudged. Judge not, lest you be judged. I'll throw in a few Jesus parallels. The unnameable is the eternally real. Being void is what we really want to live through, as what is real to live through. Poor in spirit is what we seek, not full of all kinds of things. Naming is the origin of all particular things. My experiences become a continual part of me in the manner I hold them. Free from those judged experiences, you live free of them in life. Pure in spirit, I live in the kingdom of God. Your life experiences will revolve around your emotional state of the memories. For the judgment with which you judge others will be likewise judged to you. Yet mystery and manifestations come from the same source. This source is called darkness. So everything we have named with emotion, both good and bad, continues to emerge from us getting power from someplace we do not consciously supply. Everything we have judged continues to get fuel from there. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. Yet mystery and manifestations, the pure and the impure, come from the same source. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. Everything comes, whatever is happening that's joyous or whatever is happening that's bad is going to continue to be a part of your life, getting energy from somewhere, but coming through the filters of those judgments. Darkness within darkness, the gateway to all understanding. Darkness refers to our mind, and the gateway is to enter in. We find that all over. But we have a place within a place. We can all turn to our memories. That is the darkness. But we have memories that we keep hidden. That is the darkness within the darkness. Okay, you see what's going on here? It's a mental process. We become products of our experiences. We live through those experiences. We experience them over and over again. We continue to get power from them from the background, and they exist in our mind in a deeper place. Okay, what we're going to do, if that makes sense to you, you really have to do that stuff on your own. And I mean, it's this starkly mentally interactive. When you get done interpreting all of them, they're going to get to this same place right here. But you have to bring it to this level up here until they are mentally interactive. There's something in there. It's really old. It's cryptic. You have to figure it out. But if you always understand that it is about your mind and you have to somehow put it there and it's about your life, that should make it easier to kind of nail down the interpretation. Okay, so that's it for that one. If you understand that right there, when we get into the Enuma Elish, what's going to happen is they're going to be taking that basic idea right there, and they're going to take a mental hierarchy. Let's talk about that next, because all of this teaching is going to be added to another layer altogether, making it even deeper and thicker still. Let's talk about the mental hierarchy. Okay, when we get into the creation and recreation myths, there's something different going on. That teaching is here, but the teaching has a different purpose. It not only is simply a guru teaching for the student to go listen to, this one has an outer component, a layer to it on the outset, on the outside, that is good for the population. It's very old stuff, but it's going to be following a certain sequence about us and the way we come about. I don't know how to describe it. The guru within. There's a guru in these pages, in these stories, in every one of them. So let me talk about that right here. When we see here at the beginning, at a time when even the glories above had yet to be named, that's what we just got from Lao Tzu in the beginning. Before anything, there was nothing. The real is, and unuttered was the word for the world which lay beneath. What this is actually doing, though, is this is our life. We hook right into it right here. At a time when even the glories above had yet to be named, and unuttered was the word for the world which lay beneath, it was then that the first being Apsu, who was their source. Okay, Apsu we need to identify, and the progenitor Tiamat, the mother who gave birth to all, intermingled their waters. Okay, we got to be careful. That sounds like Adam and Eve. It's not. This is God and something different. This is Mother Earth or something. It's a little bit different. All right, Apsu is the one we're concerned with right now. Apsu is a part of us. This is the emergence of us in life. What we're going to find in this story is that Apsu takes on a very specific role. Let's talk about that role. Apsu is where we emerge from, where we have a higher awareness. I want to talk about that right now. We can all get there, especially if you're a seeking person. It's a mental place that you can get to despite how frazzled your life can be. You can stand outside yourself at certain times and not feel the emotions of that. You can see your life, you can understand your life, but from outside of it, you can go, whew, boy, why can't I do that? Why can't this? Why can't, there's something there's knowledge missing, but there's a part of you that feels logical. There's that same part of you at night when you wake up frazzled and you got this mental dialogue going on you can't control. And the emotions and everything that is in conflict is got your conscious is experiencing that. But every once in a while, your conscious will notice something that comes in from outside that's going, shh, just go to sleep. There's nothing you can do tonight. That for a short period of time, you feel something very logical and it's outside of the emotions of the moment, but we get sucked right back into the feelings. We don't know what's going on. That right there is the higher awareness. That is this right here. When we're born, We live through that higher awareness right there, except we don't have the consciousness developed through memory yet to know that. We do know if you look through life, that's when all the deja vu, all the little, the little psychic hits that we have as kids. I knew that grandma and grandpa were coming over. I don't know why. Those little things are always happening that kind of disappear later. But we're living as we're growing, developing, we're living through, we're going from living to our higher awareness and having no mental awareness of it to living through the memories that we have. So we're switching from some place where we're not even, what are we, 4, 5, 6 years old before you even remember your childhood? Earlier before that, we're living through what? Some other kind of a consciousness, but we're not aware of it. Later on in life, we get to a point where we've accumulated life's experiences and we're living through these memories, but we get to a point where we realize we want to live through that higher awareness again. That's what the purpose of the journey is right here. This higher awareness is something that is going to be here in the beginning, but you're going to see that it disappears in the story for a time frame. It's going to return, but it always disappears for a time frame until something emerges. We'll just see as we go along. So that Apsu right there, that higher awareness, we need to know that higher awareness is what they're using for that character in here. But also what we just heard from Lao Tzu, that everything comes from that place. So all the good and all of the bad stuff in the stories here come from the same place that Lao Tzu was talking about. Somewhere in the great beyond, as you're moving through life and things keep happening that you're like, I do not give permission for that to happen, but it keeps acting out of me. That power's coming from somewhere. There's something happening that's triggering, and that's what they're referring to when they're talking about this stuff. It really comes down to the way you're holding the memories, but those memories don't just die. They continue to have power from someplace based on the way you're holding them. And that's what that is out there. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. It never stops. But those are analogous terms too. I've been cursed by people and nothing ever happened to them, and probably vice versa. So, there's something different going on. It has to go with it's mental. It's mental. It all has to transition to the mind. It's cursing the inner stuff, what we're holding on to. That's a karma. I will curse those who curse you and bless those who bless you. Cause and effect. Good is going to keep happening and bad is going to keep happening. But we're the ones that have made those decisions. Does everybody get that? My kids tell me, Dad, sometimes you over-explain things. I make it too complicated. And so really what we're just saying here is that you're living through your life experiences, and that whatever they are, you're going to live through them, and the power for them is going to continue to emerge. If we went to Genesis, we would see a similar concept. It's a little harder to see in Genesis, but you might ask yourself, how come the Cain and Abel story, God kind of disappears until at some point men begin to invoke the name of God. Where was God this whole time? And then God comes back for the destruction. If we go down to Abram and Sarai, we see God put them in a place of famine, and then despite all else, just completely disappears from the scene until after it's over with. So we're always seeing this component part of a story where the higher creative element is like somehow gone. And we're going to see that coming up in the Enuma Elish as we get into that too. But when we make that mental, what that means is that this higher detached awareness that we are is there, but we're living through our memories, and we want to clear out the memories so that we live through that higher self again. That's what we're looking to do. The consciousness in this story suddenly becomes a pretty diverse thing as well. The conscious is sliced up in here over time. There's going to be a child self, an infant self, a child self, a pure self, a self that gets corrupted later on, a self that takes over and becomes powerful, that is your early self that knows everything. But later on you go, oh boy, what a bonehead I was. I want to change all of that stuff. Each of these, we're becoming different people. And in this story, that's different. At the time that we go, when the called hero, in this case Marduk, in the time when Marduk is called into play, that represents the very time that we ourselves have turned inward and said, that's it, I'm going after those memories. That's a very finely defined point in here when we see that happen. The importance of knowing that these are mental steps and that they need to be understood conceptually right here would reveal something that I commented just a second ago about. In those days, men began to invoke the name of God. That was an early calling. In that story, when God had gone and something had to happen to make a change, that was the calling right there. They blended it into something with Noah. There's a bigger story there. It's harder to see that one. But that's why it's important to read these conceptually in order to see that background template. And you know what? I'm still adjusting verbiage. It's been like this template in the background. Honestly, what it really is the core structure. The template is the core structure. It's not a template in the background. Tiamat is an inner self. There is an inner being that is the subconscious. As we live life, we are living life experiences and putting those memories away. And those memories haunt us, don't they? Those memories are what are being represented here in the Tiamat and the gods that are destructive and all of that kind of stuff. They're not real, okay? They are story components representing something about us. They're called gods early on. Why? Why are these things gods when they act out? Because despite the fact that you said that's never going to happen again, it happens anyway. It's so powerful. It's just telling you, I'm a god. You can't stop me. So there's something different that has to happen. Those gods have to be destroyed. It's a wonderful story, but it goes at a mental level that we have to grasp in it, and it's going to fit into those hierarchical parts. Now, in this story here, I don't really get the flow necessarily, like the Tao or the glory of God or something like that. This is just more about kind of destroying the early self. That's what Tiamat represents, the inner being that becomes corrupted, then needs to be destroyed. And it's going to be, and then there's a rebirth, and then a moving on to a building. On the outset, you would read this as a people and go, this is wonderful for us, and we're building a new city, we're building ziggurats, we're building Babylon. It's leading a people. At the same time, it's built on a template that says, I'm building myself a new structure. I am tearing down my old self, and I'm building up a new self. So that is contained at a deeper level. People might look at these sometimes and go, it's a real thing, but it's not. They're just using components of their time to read the story. Okay, so we're there. First of all, now when we get started on this, we know kind of from a broad perspective, from Lao Tzu's more plain language, kind of, that we interpreted as far as this being a mental process and everything coming from that vastness. When we get into this and we find out that everything comes from all over the place. Okay, let's go ahead and get started on it, though. What I have here is the copy of the Enuma Elish on my computer here so that I can modify it. And what I've done is I've gone through everywhere there's something like Apsu, for example. I've identified where those are, and I've added in what that is. Higher awareness, pure mind. That's mine. That's yours. This is where we come from. This is our higher awareness and source of all. Tiamat. This is going to be our inner self. We don't have these yet. This is where they're going to be stored. We do have some things that we're born with that we don't have any control over. But Tiamat is going to need to be destroyed later. We're going to see Tiamat goes bad. Tiamat is going to represent an early inner being that's holding all of our memories that we need to destroy. So that's how I've got this done. And if we read through it here, this is how I would read it. If I'm going through it in my own mind, at a time when even the glories above have yet to be named. There's nothing in my thinking, my mind, my overhead, and unuttered was the word for the world which lay beneath. I am not living a physical experience either. It was then that their first being my higher awareness, who was their source, and the first inner self, bundle of memories, the mother who gave birth to all, intermingled their waters, producing neither field nor marsh. At a time when no divine beings had yet come into existence, there were no names to be spoken and no fates pronounced. Remember our Lao Tzu one right there. No names to be spoken. That means we were not caught in desire. And no fates pronounced. That means we are living in the mystery. We have not named anything yet. We have been born in our helpless infants without memories. But gods were given birth within those intermixing waves. This is our conscious and our subconscious, our self-aware self. We go from being an infant that doesn't even remember to kids that know to ask for a banana and things like that. We've become our early pure self. And that's what that is right there. And let me read through this and then stop and talk about something. But once they had become fully grown and become mature of form, they were born Anshar and Kishar, second child self, and they outshone them. And so many days passed by, and many years were counted. Do you see that right there? And so many days passed by, and many years were counted. That's a time of our life going by right there. We're going to see this in the Bible in lineages, or people going off to learn their trades. They go off and make tents and play the lyre and that sort of stuff. Here is very old, much older, several thousand years older at least. It just says, and so many days passed by and many years were counted. We are sequencing along. Then their first son Anu, this is another self-iteration. And Anshar caused his son Anu to become just like him. Another self-iteration came Nudimmud, out of control, earliest adult self. I want to talk about these iterations here for a minute. Let me straighten out some errors I made. Who is also his spitting image? Is this a clue that it is you? We are producing something from ourselves that is from ourselves. And Nudimmud, out of control, earliest adult self, proved to be even greater than his forebears, profoundly wise and full of insight, with strength in his limb, more infused with might than even his grandfather Anshar. Think of your early life looking back. If you're on a path, you're going to look back and see some point where you were an innocent kid, then you learned things, and then you became tough and really, this is the way life is. We're judging life, we're living life, we're not aware, and this is that part of us right there. With none among the gods, none among the early qualities based in unaware judgments, who could be considered as equal. All of the gods are our thoughts, our knowledge of what to do and what is good and what is bad, beliefs, qualities, your sense of righteousness, fairness, justice, all those things. Who could be considered his equal? That generation of early beliefs would gather together for wild revels. We're starting to have mental confusion. So they prove bothersome for Tiamat first. So they prove bothersome to our first inner self. Their hullabaloo echoed. We have mental conflict and turmoil. All this commotion proved unsettling to our inner self. And she was bothered by all of their activity within Andaruna, the dwelling place of the gods, your conscious mind. This is what's being confused and hurt. Okay, let's stop and talk about those iterations for a second. Okay, as far as those iterations, the people along the way, gave birth to so-and-so and that sort of thing. What I imagine is that would be something that would be more known to the Babylonians of their time than us, that they must be doing something in their culture. What I want to say is that in these templates, you can see big steps. And that's what I'm going for here. But within each big step, there can be finer detail that I don't know what that finer detail is because I'm so far removed from their time. What did it mean to them? We're going to run into that ahead as we get into failure cycles and all these things being called into existence. We're going to know that it's a failure cycle going on, but we're not going to know what all of these little creatures individually mean, perhaps, which it doesn't matter. We're going to know, well, that one means, you're angry physically. That one means you're out of control, mentally, things like that. This one means you're anxious and you can't settle down. That one means you're angry. That these are the kind of things that are going to be bothersome to us. And somehow those things are going to represent that, but we don't know what they are. But we know that if this is something causing destruction and then it repeats, that is a failure cycle. So again, we may not know the fine detail. As far as these iterations, what I imagine is in their culture, which is really booming at the time, thousands of years ago, that maybe they're doing something with throughout the day with activities. When you're this age, you're an infant, then you're here, but then there must be some sort of, we're functioning in a society here. You don't just let kids run all over the place. There's no school, parents are working, things like that. There must be some kind of a structure, and maybe that's what they're doing here, that these would represent, when you're this age, you go do this kind of an activity, you learn this. When you're this age, you kind of go figure out a trade, that somehow things like that are held in those iterations. What we're really looking for here is the big pieces. We're going to see a failure mechanism happen. We're going to see a destruction needing to happen, and that's what we're going for. So as far as those iterations, what what I want to say is that they're there. I don't know what all of them mean, but we're going to find ones in here that you go, oh, I know exactly what that one is. When it's time to destroy things, when it's time for Marduk to come on board, that's the calling, that's the turning back. The destruction would be the same thing as if you were reading it in Genesis and it came time to destroy the entire world. And in this case, it's time to destroy the entire past. They're going to be conceptually the same thing, even though story-wise they're held in different verbiage. Okay, does that make sense? There's going to be fine detail we can't get to, and in this case it looks to me like there's just some sort of cultural iteration of life experience that children are going through that we're not aware of. But it's going to step into where we need to, we're adults, and it's time to turn inward and take an inner path. Okay, let's get back to it. In fact, if you look here, you'll see that moved very quickly. We've gone from, everything was born. It started right off the bat. There was a little time gone by, some iterations, and then all of a sudden these gods are so raucous that it's out of control. So let's go ahead and read on and just see what happens. Okay, so profoundly wise and full of insight with strength in his limb. This is me getting older, as I'm some teenage age or something like that. More infused with might than even his grandfather Anshar. Yeah, I know better than you do now. I really don't. What's that saying? I wish all of life's problems had hit me at 17 when I knew all the damn answers. Yeah, that's it right there. We're more infused with might than even our grandfather Anshar. That's not a good thing. With none among the gods, with none among the early qualities based in unaware judgments who can be considered my equal. This generation of early beliefs would gather together for wild revels, so they proved bothersome to our first bundle of memories, our inner being. Their raucous noise echoed inside of our mind, in our first bundle of memories, all in our consciousness. There was nothing the higher awareness could do to mitigate their carousing. Okay, listen to this part right here. Apsu's the higher awareness. Mind is crazy. Wake up at 3 a.m, and you're tossing and turning, and you got some mental turmoil you can't resolve, but you can't get to sleep. You don't know why you're awake. And every once in a while, there's a part of you that steps in and says, hey. And when you're there, when you're hearing this, you don't feel the emotions. For a short period of time, there's a part of you that is saying, hey, there's nothing you can do. Just try to sleep. Take care of it tomorrow. Although we slip right back into the memories. This is Apsu unable to mitigate the carousing. This is our higher awareness unable to interrupt our thoughts. We're not there. But there was nothing Tiamat. There was nothing the first bundle of memories would say to quiet them down. Okay, think about this for a moment here. What the description there, all of it. What we really have here is that the higher awareness cannot interrupt. It's not being able to interrupt that process. And the bundle of memories, everything that is emerging in the conscious that's causing the turmoil, can't quiet them down. The inner memories cannot quiet themselves. They must be changed or manipulated. So you see there's something missing here, the consciousness, which is going to have to come into play later. We're going to have to become aware, and that's when Marduk comes about. But this right here very clearly illustrates that inner turmoil. I want this to ease up. I can't. I'm stuck here. I want this to ease up. I can't. I'm stuck here. And no matter how troublesome their conduct became to her, regardless of how rowdy things were, she just put up with it. We're tolerating our turmoil. We're becoming products of our experiences, unaware of that. We're putting up with it. It's gotta hate it, but we're just trying to live with it. This kept up until the higher awareness, the source of the mighty God, summoned him. This is us at some point going, okay, conflicted conscious, Mumu, saying, hear me, conflicted conscious, who I can rely upon. Come with me. Together we'll speak with the inner first bundle of memories. We're looking to start a healing process here. They went together and seated themselves before Tiamat. We're going back to face our first bundle of memories. And the conversation with her about their children, the gods. The higher awareness raised his voice to be heard. I have been very troubled by the manner of their conduct. Yeah, we're living life in frazzled turmoil, so that I could not relax during the day, not sleep well at night either, nor sleep well at night. Therefore I shall bring it to a halt and get rid of them all. I'm going to wipe out the past. Then silence shall reign, and thus we might get some sleep. But as soon as Tiamat, first bundle of memories, our inner early being, hear these words, we became incensed. Overcome with ire, she screamed intensely at her higher awareness. But then she soothed the fury that raged within her breast. That's a weird thing. She was angry. He wants to resolve things. She was angry, but then she settled down and relaxed. There's a thing that's going to be hard to see if you want to jump ahead mentally. A part where Pharaoh in Egypt, in the Exodus story, that early on, there's this point where God sends plagues. Pharaoh says, you can go. Then God hardens his heart and Pharaoh says, you can't. It's going back and forth. You can go. No, you can't. You can go. No, you can't. You can go. No, you can't. This would represent our own. I got to do this. I won't. I'm failing. I know what I need to do, but I don't do it. Anyway, so we have this internal dialogue going on at this point. Do you see that? Could we permit our own offspring to be thus eradicated? I have to take care of those things. I have shame and pain hidden away. Despite their troublesome ways, we ought to put up with it. This is just leave it in place, struggling to leave the past. Then the officer, Mumu, the conflicted consciousness, provided his own answer to the higher awareness. So, yep, we have an internal dialogue going on right here. We're talking back and forth. But he spoke at odds with the advice of his mother, the earth. She's like, I don't want to. He's like, yes, I do. You ought to put an end to their annoying behavior, that one might relax during the day and sleep well at night. You see what's going on? Are you in this story? The higher awareness was in full agreement with what he said and satisfied with thoughts of devising a vile plan for his sons. We're trying to just look for ways of going in and resolving our issues, and they're putting it into a wonderful story. The thoughts of devising a vile plan for his sons, the gods. His officer, the conflicted consciousness, were looking at it and saying, oh my God, yes, and enthusiastically kissed him, happy finally decide to move on. We're happy to go. Yeah, you can go. No, you can't. You can go. No, you can't. There's an element in here in the background you got to look for. This is an inner dialogue from perhaps 6,000, 7,000 years ago, with stuff that obviously bridges from even farther back. We'll talk about it when we get there. Yet their plan was conveyed to their sons, the gods, and what they planned. Yet what they planned was conveyed. Okay, so this is the inner part that we know. Yeah, it's conveyed. Our memories know that we're going to go after them. What happens when you start getting closer and closer to the memories you want to hide away? They get more intense feeling. For they heard everything and were troubled, pacing about. They all grew quite quiet and sat around without speaking, until the god with the gift for wisdom and understanding, Ea, the god who is insightful, recognized their intentions. And he formulated a solution for it all, planning it out well. He concocted it with superlative skill. Ea is going to be an early wise self that is not a good self. It's like maybe say cunning would be a better term here. Early cunning self, we'll put it there. The God who is insightful, recognized their intentions. This is us being dishonest with ourselves, our capacity to get around and bullshit ourselves. And he formulated a solution for it all, planning it out well. He concocted it with superlative skill. His spell was perfect, for when he chanted it, he calmed the turbulent waters. And abounding sleep overcame Apsu, the higher awareness, pure mind goes away right here. We lose touch with our higher awareness. He became pacified. He caused him to enter a deep sleep, seeped in tranquility. We're ready to live our life here through our cunning early self, pretending that life's okay and it's not. While the conflicted consciousness, his advisor, was left in a trance. Yeah, we're clueless. We don't know what to do. Then Ea moved his belt and took his crown from his head. Ea is taking the belt and the crown from the head of Apsu and Mumu, and took his mantle of brilliance and dressed himself in it. So he's putting on the power. I got the power. Then he forced the the higher awareness down under his feet and crushed him. So this represents that higher awareness now is no longer, we were born and we lived through that. But as we grew and took on life experiences from these gods that are gotten raucous, the memories and our experiences, that higher awareness is now under our feet. It's still there, but it's not in charge at that moment. And bound the conflicted consciousness, lying him down crosswise. So we're just going to live in our turmoil. Then he established his own residence on top of Apsu, the higher awareness. He's the one in charge now. And he took Mumu, the conflicted conscious, holding him by a nose leash. Yep, there you go. How weak are you? How strong are you? When you're strong, the nose leash comes off. When you're weak, the nose leash is on. We don't make the change, even if we know what to do. And after he had subdued and then killed all of his foes, then Ea raised a declaration of victory over his adversaries. Remember, this is I didn't finish this up. I apologize. I'm trying to get, it's not the best. I think I want people, you have to read it on your own. Okay, this is how I'm doing it though. And after he had subdued and then killed off all of his foes, this is everything, all the things that's like, I need to do this. At some point you just give in. He erased the declaration of victory over his adversaries. Then he could rest within his own personal chambers. You're now living that life right there within your own mind. And these he named the higher awareness. This is who is in charge now. He named it Apsu, although it's not the original Apsu. This is the higher, this is in charge of what's there. Remember, good or bad comes from there. Good or bad, it is now turned over to bad. And established temples there. Yep, this is where all of the things are there that you worship. And it's not really worship, it's things that you hold on to, things that you hate. The temple of shame, temple of anger, temple of judgment. Making it his home. That early powerful self lived in luxury with his wife Damkina. Now listen to this. There, within the house of fates, there in the hall of purpose. What just happened? Remember Lao Tzu? There within the house of fate. Caught in desire. There in the hall of purpose. You see only the manifestations. That's why I love Lao Tzu. He's got some wonderful parallels in there that are easy to pick through. If you can read them conceptually, they're easy to see. If you can't, they're not. You would look at it and go, I have no idea what this goofball is talking about. Okay, let's move on. Then the Lord came, who among them all was the most judicious. There within the watery Apsu, the higher awareness, the pure mind, there within this area where all things emerge from, did Marduk. This is the current seeker. Okay, so right here we're getting the idea of a calling coming up. The conscious, a.k.a. warrior self, takes his shape. Not many people are going to do this, but here we go. Within the unsullied waters of the higher awareness, unsullied, this is a pure place, pure mind, was Marduk, current seeker's consciousness, warrior born. This is us going, that's it, I'm done. This is that point where you go, I have two lives, and the second one starts when I realize I only have one life. This is that point. You want to go back and make changes, make amends, figure out what you've done that made life go bad and how to undo it so you can be free of it. From his father Ea, his mother Damkina gave birth to him. He was suckled on the milk of the goddess's own breast. You see, all of these, they have to play out in the mind. They can't, this is not real life stuff. These are iterations of things we have going on in us, is the only way this makes sense. The goddess's own breast. This means you're consuming the good stuff. And she who breastfed him embodied him with excellence. We're going to have later fish and loaves are going to be which are feeding. So that he had a lofty stature. The look of his eyes was intense. I'm going to just read through this part. This is how they're describing him. And what I'm going to suggest is see if you can spot something in here that might hint towards. I laugh, but I don't know how else to explain it. Brain type, personality type. She who breastfed him embodied him with excellence. Remembering before I go on there that this is all spiritual, not physical. This is about how the person functions internally. You're not physically this big, huge, monstrous thing with four eyes. This is something different. He was suckled on the milk of the goddess's own breasts. And she who breastfed him embodied him with excellence, so that he had a lofty stature. The look of his eyes was intense. Mature from the very first, and mighty, even at a young age. When his grandfather, self-iteration, looked upon him, he was glad. This is some part of us that's living in our past life that wants it resolved still, but we're living there putting up with it. His face shone greatly, his heart was exceedingly pleased. So perfect that his head was twice as lofty as any other god, rising high above them, he was the better by every measure. Both his arms and legs were well formed beyond comparison, so that it could not be fathomed, almost incomprehensible. Moreover, he possessed 4 ears to hear and 4 eyes to see. I'm calling that larger awareness, larger spatial awareness. And red flames leapt forth whenever he opened his mouth. Yeah, we're pretty serious about what we say. His 4 ears were also considerable of voluminous size, as were his eyes, which were capable of perceiving anything. This is the spiritual eye. Being unsurpassed among the gods of exceptional build, having limbs which were mighty and a body terrifically tall. Those are spiritual stature, not physical stature, or mental stature, or personality stature. Then that self-iteration cried, Mariutu. This is a way of saying Marduk, but I don't know why it says that right there. There's something I don't know what that means, why it's that, but it means the current self. My son, you are the king of the gods, dressed in a shining robe fit for 10 gods, rising beyond him. There were 5 almighty beams which surmounted his head. I don't know if that's the mental hierarchy. There's 5 parts of the mental hierarchy. The higher awareness, the consciousness, the subconscious, the memories that are stored in there, and the flow of life itself as a result of the quality of the first 4, the alignment. There were 5 almighty beams which surmounted his head. When we go to the Garden of Eden, we have creation story number 2, which looked to be the original one. There's 1 river flowing out of Eden, and then 4 that flow from there. So we have a total of 5 rivers flowing from Eden. We have 5 mighty beams flowing from Marduk's head. And then self-iteration invented the 4 winds and then fashioned them. This is what we're going to get into, knowing that we're just building tools that are going to be for changing memories. I don't know what they mean by 4 winds and things like that. These are mechanisms we're going to need that are mental thought processes and the ability to communicate with each other openly. And self-iteration so-and-so invented the 4 winds and then fashioned them. These he set in current seeker's consciousness, the warrior self's hand, saying, free them, my son. So this is us now realizing that there's things we have to do, that this part of us is going to have to go back and make some changes. Then he formed dust and caused the tornado to bear it away. Then he invented the tidal swell, which aggravated Tiamat, the first bundle of memories. And the first bundle of memories was agitated and unsettled both day and night. We're struggling to leave. We're wrestling internally. The gods, meanwhile, were distressed and forced to endure. So with vile thoughts on their minds, they spoke to the first bundle of memories. Because at the time that they killed your husband, they killed a higher awareness, and you failed to stand by his side, but rather sat by silently. Yeah, we're just putting up with it. Thus did Anu invent the 4 strong winds and tidal swell, so as to intentionally agitate you, so that we have no peace. Did you not hold your husband, the higher awareness, pure mind, within your heart? All of it is within us, isn't it? Yeah. These clues are all in here. And likewise, the officer, the conflicted consciousness, who is also captured. It's not surprising you're forsaken. Are you not a mother? You are unsettled both day and night, but look at our plight. Remember, this is a long story going on. This is their media. And we're talking here about that inner struggle to turn inward and face those things and start dealing with them. Are we not distressed? Have a heart. Do you not care for us? She's hanging on to things that makes everybody hurt. That's what happens in us. Look, we lack strength in our limbs and our eyes are hollow. Free us from this distressing burden that we might get sleep. Raise the war cry. Make them pay for what they have done. Destroy this enemy. Eradicate him entirely from off the earth. The first bundle of memories listened to what they said, and she agreed with them. Yes, I think that we ought to do just as you suggested. The gods who dwell within the higher awareness will suffer great misery, for they chose to do evil to those gods that gave them birth. And they gathered about and stood in proximity to the first bundle of memories. They were brutal and planned endlessly, both day and night. Okay, just stop and think for a minute. Imagine you need to change your life. You need to turn inward and you need to face these memories. And it's not okay. It doesn't feel okay. It doesn't. You got this struggle going on. That's what's happening right here in this story. It's the inner struggle to face oneself and the pain that we have along the way. They were brutal and planned endlessly, both day and night, grumbling and fuming, all done in the cause of making war. They called together a council of war to consider battle plans. Lady Huber, that's a part of us that's the creator of evil things, devious, who made all, produced an unfailing weapon. This is where we're going to get into, there are details in here that I don't know what these mean, but these are going to be things these are things that are not good for us. These are things, what is represented in these things are bad stuff that acts out of us, are ways that we are. Whether it's feelings, actions, beliefs, something somehow. Yep, it's deeper than what I can get to. Lady Huber, the creator of all evil things, who made all our inner cunning self that, I want to fight out, produced an unfailing weapon. She brought big snakes with piercing teeth and vicious fangs. Their bodies she had infused with poison rather than blood. And she caused these raging dragons to emit deadly beams and to wear mantles of brilliance so that they were like gods. Then the creator of evil things raised her voice, inside verbalizing the curse. Anyone who gazes at them will be stricken down with horror. When I scream and yell and start slamming things around, you're going to go, what the hell just happened here? Anyone who gazes at them will be stricken down in horror. They will always raise up their bodies and never back down. Yeah. I'll back down when it's done acting out of me. I was raised watching that one. And then I live my life experiencing that. They will always raise up their bodies and never back down. Then Tiamat, the first bundle of memories, enlisted a horned snake, a Mashusu dragon, a Lamu hero, an Ugalu devil, a mad dog, a scorpion man, a brutal Umu devils, half man, half fish, half man, half bull, carrying ruthless weaponry and who reveal no fear in battle. Yeah. When it acts out, it doesn't matter. There's no fear. It's an acting out. There's something else in charge from the background. Her commands were so portentous that none could be ignored. And in addition to these, she recruited 11 more likewise. And above all of her children, of the gods who had assembled, she conferred upon King U. This is the strong adult past self that this is what you're solidly going to be turning into here. The chief rank amongst them all, bestowing the generalship of her army and rule of the Congress. This is who's in charge of your early life. This is who you need to defeat, King U. Bestowing the generalship of her army and rule of the Congress. This is, you are now in charge of the way I act out and the way I make decisions and the way I act out on those decisions. You're in charge. We see that. To hold aloft the spear to signify battle, to gather the warriors. She had given him high command of the entire combat force and placed him to be seated upon the throne of rule, saying, I have conjured a spell in your name, making you foremost among the gods of Congress. You now rule all of the gods. You will reign supreme, for further, you will be my soulmate. You see that? That is your early inner being coupling up with your early conscious being. Your orders shall not be disregarded among the Anuki. I'm going to compare that with a new name in here. Yeah, they got something going on, I'm not sure. Your order shall not be disregarded among the Anuki. The Anuki are those gods that are going crazy. She conveyed to him the tablet of fate. Pay attention to that. That's going to show up elsewhere. She conveyed to him the tablet of fate, clasping it at his chest. What you say will not be altered, and you will speak the law. So this is really us just making somehow, as time goes on, this doesn't happen consciously, I'm sure. This is just what happens, is that we are turning ourselves over to our first consciousness, our unaware consciousness, our adult self, adult past self. So after King U, the adult past self, had received his rank, been given Anu, self-iteration 2, power. This is the person in charge, I guess. Yeah, that somehow that can link us into Anu. That's okay, we can just move on. What we know right now is that King U is in charge. He had pronounced the fates of his sons, the gods. So he is the one, this is where the conscious is coming from. You pronounce the fates of the sons, the gods. What is acting out of you, you pronounce their fates because you're the one that pronounced them. You made them. You made those decisions. They're there. What comes out of your lips would obliterate flames. Your potent poison would serve to incapacitate the mighty. Okay, I think that ends tablet 1. Do you see what I've done there with it, though? And I hope that makes sense. I'm going to end this video because it got so long. And it takes a long time to get into. As I get into the other tablets, we can go straight into it, and I can use this as a feed-in point. But you can see how much goes into it. You can't just read it and start throwing that stuff out there. As I put in the modifications, I think, and you read through it that way, that starts showing what has to happen in the mind, remembering that they've got these memorized and they're working with them all the time. They're playing with it all the time. They're doing, whenever they're not learning or doing what they're doing, what's important to them? Animal husbandry, agriculture, building waterways, building ziggurats. At some point, they're doing wonderful things. Their culture is thriving. The Apis bulls that were carved that were just, oh my gosh. And this is, I think we're closer in time to the ancient Egyptians than the Egyptians were to the Babylonians. And I want to say something about some of that, like the half man, half this sort of thing or whatnot. There is from a region in the area there, like the Göbekli Tepe, and what's the other Tepe? It's like 12,000 years old that have got these carvings of half man, half creatures on there. But it's even older than the Babylonians. It's like, whoa, what's going on? And you know what? If you look at Genesis, you will see Genesis in the Jewish tradition kind of springboarding off of and leaving what? They were leaving Babylonia behind, and the Babylonians and the Tower of Babel, and how that is a bad thing. And you can see that one religion in one culture sprangboard off of and separated from the previous one. And if you look here and you hear those things, and it's like, well, this is probably 7,000 years old, but that the Tepe places are like 12,000 years old, much older still. So is that the same thing happening? I'm not sure, but it wouldn't surprise me if it's like, well, this is what they used to believe these were gods. Now we're going to call these bad things or something like that they could be springboarding off of and separating from something else in the region as well. I don't know. But at some point you look at those and go, it doesn't matter. I see what's going on in the template. In this area, whatever they've got going on, this represents a bundle of bad things happening. Oh, this represents a bundle of bad experiences happening. So when you look at them conceptually, you begin to see what's happening there anyway. And even if you don't know exactly what they mean, you can look at your own life and go, what's my bad stuff? That's it right there. I don't need to know specifically what they're telling me. I just have to look at my own life and go, what hurts me? And what hurts the people around me. That's it. And that's what this healing path is for. Okay, I'm going to end the video now just because of the length of it. I hope it makes sense. I'll see you in the next one.